Hey, the 53-man roster is set, except it's 52.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? Matt Derry with you. It is a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day on a cut-down day, Tuesday, August 27th and a Wednesday, August 28th. Thanks for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcast. Thank you to our everydayers out there, those of you that watch or listen daily to Locked On Lions. We appreciate all of you. Some of our everydayers always chiming in on our SpeakPipe, our voicemail system at speakpipe.com/Derry podcast page. You want to leave a voicemail for me, we will play them on our call of the day segment. We'll do another one tomorrow. Locked On Lions today, though, on this cut down day Tuesday, brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Follow us on Twitter at Derry Speaks, DERY Speaks, at Locked On Lions, the Matt Derry Facebook fan page. And of course, you can check us out daily on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. Please subscribe. On the show today, we will go over the 52-man roster. Yes, the Lions have some maneuvering still to do. This is where Brad Holmes always seems to work his magic. You had to get down today at 4 o'clock Eastern to 53 men on your roster, and then develop a practice squad, which the Lions are still putting together. The Lions have 52 on the roster, and really 51 because John Kaminsky's still on the roster, yet he's not on IR yet. A lot to explain. We will get into that coming up momentarily on the show. There are some surprises on this roster, some I did not expect, some other surprises on the list of those that were released. We'll talk about that. Also, what is next for Brad Holmes? We already know one move that's going to be made very, very soon, according to reports and Adam Schefter. All of that today here on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions. Very exciting. And remember this. Let me start with this about Cutdown Day. Remember this. This is the first 53-man roster. It's not the final 53-man roster. There's going to be a lot of movement. There are going to be players today going, whoo, no one called me to cut me. And then on Friday, they're gone. On Thursday, they're gone. Next Monday, they're gone. Just because Brandon Joseph is on the team doesn't mean he's going to be on the team next week. I'm just using Brandon as an example. I think he's going to stay. But, here, just, it's fun to talk about today, and it's fun to go over. The Cleveland Browns, for example, have 4 quarterbacks. And I said this yesterday on the show. Tyler Huntley is going to be traded somewhere. Maybe he's traded to the Lions, and they're working on this right now because the Lions have kept 2 quarterbacks, and that is it. Should we start there? Yes, I guess that's the easy, pressing the easy button, but I'm not saying it's a big surprise, but Nate Sudfeld was cut today by the Lions, released. This surprised me a little bit because yesterday Dan Campbell made the comment that he wasn't sure if Hendon Hooker was ready to be the number 2 quarterback. Hooker certainly got better with every preseason game. The rookie out of Tennessee coming back from the knee injury just at times looked lost in the offseason workouts. At times during training camp struggled, but every preseason game he got better. Are the Lions ready to crown him as the backup? No, but we know this. Nate Sudfeld ain't the answer either. And today he was released and let go by the Lions. What does that mean? They could add another quarterback. I mentioned Snoop Huntley from the Browns. The Browns right now have Watson, Winston, DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and also Huntley. The Patriots released Bailey Zappi. There are other Nathan Petermans available if you like the Peterman experience, Jay Peterman from Seinfeld. But there are guys like that available. I don't know if the Lions are talking to the Browns, but it's interesting that they only have 2 quarterbacks right now. Campbell said he was a little bit concerned about Hooker definitely being number 2. Could this be an opportunity for a trade to be made or some other quarterback to be brought in? Right now, the Lions roster is at 52 guys, not 53. So with that being said, that's where it's at the moment. So there are some openings, there are some possibilities. I said this before about Nate Sudfeld over the last couple of days. He never wowed me. He never was somebody that I thought was going to be a factor. I wasn't thrilled with what I saw from Nate Sudfeld. Nobody was. Nobody was. As far as the players that were let go today, we talked about Sudfeld. Let's talk about Kyle Pecco for a second. Kyle Pecco, the defensive tackle, just like last year at this time when Craig Reynolds was let go, Kyle Pecco cannot be exposed to waivers, so he's probably going to be brought back. The Lions are just doing some roster maneuvering. But Broderick Martin going an injured reserve designated to return, Broderick Martin is going to be out for a little while with that hamstring, but can come back. Lions need D tackles. They're not even sure DJ Reader is going to be available for the opener. So a guy like Kyle Pecco got cut today. Expect him to come back. Again, roster maneuvering. Just real fast, guys that were let go today, Isang Bassi, the cornerback, Doris Fountain, the wide receiver, Javelin Guidry, a cornerback, gone. Jamarco Jones let go. The legendary Tom Kennedy, gone. Sean McKeon, the tight end. CJ Moore was let go today. Let me tell you something. The Lions, love CJ Moore, his veteran leadership, the way he plays on special teams. Yes, he was suspended last year for gambling. This one surprised me a little bit, but again, Brandon Joseph made the team over him, and so did something called Lauren Strickland. We'll get into that momentarily. Pat O'Connor let go. We mentioned Kyle Pecco, Donovan Peoples-Jones yesterday, Nate Sudfeld, and linebacker Ty Summers. Those guys were all released. As far as waived players go, Mitchell Agude, the linebacker, Maurice Alexander, the wide receiver, Abraham Beauplan, the linebacker, but he's expected to stay on the practice squad. He had a great couple of games in the preseason. The Canadian Matthew Betts let go, could also be a practice squad guy. Guard Jake Burton, Jalen Calhoun, the wide receiver. The long snapper job, Hogan Hatton wins it. Scott Daly, who was the incumbent, loses it. Shout out to Jeff Risden from Lions Wire. He called this a month and a half ago. He said Hogan Hatton is going to be the long snapper. This is a guy that can go down and make plays on special teams on punts and cover punts as well as just snap it. And so Scott Daly was let go. Caden Davis let go. Kinsley Egukon, the backup center, let go. Jake Fromm, the hero from Saturday's preseason game, gone. Jake Funk, gone. Stephen Gilmore was let go. Cornerback. You got to think the Lions want to keep him on the practice squad. Gilmore was on the active roster all of last season, but did not have a good training camp or preseason and was beaten out. We'll tell you about that momentarily. Jamar Jefferson, Bam Knight, gone. The tight end situation got very, very interesting today because not only did Shane Zylstra get let go, but so did James Mitchell, a former mid-round draft pick of Brad Holmes's. He loses out to Parker Hesse, who makes the team. Chris Smith, Isaac Ukwu, the defensive end, was phenomenal during the training, during the preseason. He'll likely be a practice squad candidate as well. So those are just some of the cuts that took place today. I think Uku's going to be back on the practice squad. I think Jamar Jefferson will be back on the practice squad. I think Pecco will be back on the active roster. So this is where we're at with cutdown day. Sudfeld, maybe they want to keep him as a practice squad guy too. I don't know if anybody's going to pick him up. I think, and this is just a guess, I think the Lions are looking for another quarterback other than Sudfeld. That's just a guess of mine. But again, this roster is so loaded and there's so much talent here that we're not sitting here today going, oh, can you believe? James Mitchell is a bit of a surprise. All right. He's been in the system a couple of years. He was a Brad Holmes draft pick, but they love Parker Hesse, can play some fullback, has some experience in the league with the Falcons, was a better blocker than James Mitchell. And we had talked about him a couple of times here in the preseason on Locked On Lions, that was a guy that they really, really liked and really thought could help them. And he's a total throwback Dan Campbell type player. He wins that third tight end job over both Shane Zylstra, Flying Zylstra brothers, and James Mitchell. Could the Lions be in the market for another tight end, or do they have the hope they can bring both those guys back in the practice squad? We'll see. I think James Mitchell is going to sign somewhere else. I think there'd be a team looking for another tight end would scoop him up. That's what I would think. All right. Surprises on who made the roster. We will go over that coming up next, right here on a Tuesday edition, a cut down day edition of Locked On Lions. Hi, folks. Locked On Lions today, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Looking to put some money down on the Tigers. We're all of a sudden at 500, taking on the Angels. You want to bet on the game tonight? You can bet on everything, live stuff in the middle of the game, player props, and more at FanDuel.com/lockedon. They got something for you that's a little bit different to it right now to FanDuel. Think about this for a second. You want to watch all the NFL games? You can. All right. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. If I could read, that'd be good. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Locked On Lions. Matt Derry back with you on a Tuesday, August 27th. Cut down day is here. Next up, we got through cuts. We got through the preseason. We're going to get to the practice squad tomorrow. But good news is we're getting closer to September 8th and the start to the season and the Rams coming in. And we can talk about games that I'm excited about. All right, surprises on this roster. You look on the offensive side, the first thing that comes to mind, it's not a surprise. He had a great preseason. Isaiah Williams made the team. Undrafted rookie free agent out of Illinois makes the team, at least for now, on the 52-man roster. So you got Amon-Ra St. Brown, J-Mo, Khalif Raymond, and Isaiah Williams. You have to figure another wide receiver is coming. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. But that's a little bit of a surprise that Williams is the Lions' 4th receiver, but not really when you saw what he did in those preseason games, how he got open, how he ran routes, the speed, a little bit undersized, but this was a guy that came on and played very, very well all throughout August, and he has now made the team. Again, I'm a little bit surprised about the Sudfeld thing. We talked about that. Tight end, there's only 3. Maybe they'll be adding a 4th or sneaking somebody onto the practice squad. We will see. As far as offensive tackle goes, not a surprise. Decker, Sewell, Skipper, Sorsdahl, Giovanni Manu on the team. Interior offensive linemen, no surprises. Ragnow, Glasgow, Zeitler, Awoshika, and Michael Neese is going to be the backup center if they don't, move Graham Glasgow over. Christian Mahogany, 7th round pick, is on the reserve non-football injury list. Defensive tackles, Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader, Levi Onwuzurike, Mekhi Wingo are there. Broderick Martin goes on injured reserve for now. No surprises really there. As far as edge rushers go, what I'm surprised about, and I said this before, John Kaminsky, who they said is going on IR, is on the active roster right now. So they've got to maneuver certain things because you can only have 2 injured reserve players that can return during the season. So the Lions have to figure out how they're going to work that, with Broderick Martin, IR to return, and Emmanuel Mosley on IR to return. Biggest surprise for me is the 5 safeties that the Lions kept. Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Ife Melifanu on the roster, no IR or PUP. Brandon Joseph, not a surprise, makes the team, but former Division II safety who played a 5th year at Ball State last year when undrafted, Lauren Strickland, makes the team. I want to admit to you right now, my job on this show is to know as much about the Detroit Lions as possible and entertain you every single day. I can tell you right now that Lauren Strickland, I had no idea who this guy was. None. I looked at the roster and I went, Lauren Strickland? Made some plays in the games. This was a stunner to me that he made the team over CJ Moore, and he made the team at all. So they kept 5 safeties and 6 corners, but yet they only have 4 wide receivers and 3 tight ends. And again, the roster sits at 52 right now, not 53. again, I'm not going to read into anything yet until this is the first roster, not the final roster. I want to see what the practice squad looks like tomorrow, and I want to also see what other moves are going to be made. All right, but the bottom line is this, and I said this before. I feel like I'm repeating myself 1,000 times, but I'm going to do this. This is a really good team. This is a team that is loaded with high-end talent. All right. There are teams right now around the NFL that are dying to find near starters to fill their roster with. There's teams that have depth issues that are chomping at the bit to try and get some of these release players to sign with them. The Lions are not desperate at all. The Lions are looking to fill this roster out, figure out the injury reserve situation. I believe bring back, like I said, Kyle Pecco, because I think he's coming back. They have to have depth along that D line. They only have right now 4 interior defensive linemen, and that is it. And then Pecco would be would be 5, and they need more because DJ Reader might not play in the first game against the Rams. So those are a little bit of some of the surprises for me when it comes to this roster. Let's talk about the kicking situation for a second with Jake Bates. Folks, I'm going to do it again. I'm reaching for the paper. The kicker list. I'm reaching for the kicker list because I was wrong about Brad Holmes. I thought Brad Holmes for sure was going to bring in another kicker weeks ago, last week, and today. Yet, despite the inconsistency, despite everything that took place in the preseason, despite missing a chip shot on Saturday against the Steelers, Jake Bates is the man. The former UFL Michigan Panther is with us. He's on the roster. There doesn't seem to be any, I haven't seen any reports. I'm recording about 7:30. I'm going a little bit later tonight. There are no reports of any kickers that were let go that the Lions are going to try to scoop up. So shout out to Jake Bates and shout out to Brad Holmes. For years, I've been reading off all the kickers. Zane Gonzalez, Randy Bullock, Matthew Wright, Austin Seibert, Ryan Santoso, Eldrick Rosas, Riley Patterson, Seibert, Eberle, Badgley, Rosas, Ficken, Patterson, Badgley. The list goes on, baby. The list is back. Woo-hoo-hoo. But this year, there needs to be no list. Should I just rip it up? No, I got to keep it fresh. It's the Jake Bates show. This is Jake Bates' world, and we're just living in it. I'm getting a little slap happy here. I'm happy for the young man. I'm happy for the kid. Gave him a 2-year deal for a reason, and they're sticking with him. Now, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go to bed tonight. I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning, and I'm going to find out that the Lions signed somebody. And I'm going to go, oh, remember everything I said yesterday? But regardless, that's where we're at with this situation. Jake Bates is here for now and is going to be a member of this Lions team. So he did enough, I guess you could say, in the preseason and just everywhere else to garner this opportunity. I think the Lions are sticking by him for sure. All right, what is next for this team? What are they going to do from a roster perspective? There's a wide receiver that yours truly mentioned on yesterday's show that is apparently on his way to Detroit. And we'll get into that coming up next, right here on Locked On Lions. And Locked On Lions today, we want to tell you about, thank you for making Locked On Lions your first listen. But for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, folks, Locked On Lions for a Tuesday edition. It is Cutdown Day Tuesday on the Locked On Podcast Network on a August 27th. Again, practice squad tomorrow. We'll see about which guys stay, which guys get scooped up to active rosters on other teams. But right now, the Lions roster sits at 52 as they continue to maneuver some things. Speaking of the practice squad, all reports indicate that former Broncos wide receiver Tim Patrick, who the Broncos were trying to trade just yesterday, 6'4", big-bodied guy, 30 years of age, a lot of talent, but it just tore his ACL last year or 2 years ago, then had his Achilles last year. Tim Patrick at 6'4" with the Broncos, many years in Denver, is coming to Detroit according to Adam Schefter. According to Schefter, Patrick is going to sign with the practice squad with the opportunity or with the idea that he's going to be elevated to the active roster soon. Now, again, teams maneuver this practice squad thing all the time. Remember last year, Quinton Bohanna was on the practice squad. And then the team would elevate him weekly until they ran out. It's like a 3 or 4 week rule. Until then, they had to place him on the active roster. And then the Cowboys scoop Bohanna back up, or maybe it was the Titans. He was on Dallas and went to Tennessee. So for right now, Tim Patrick has agreed to come to the Lions. And of course, with the promise that he's going to be receiver number 5, maybe even number 4 on this team. We mentioned this yesterday. When healthy, he's a pretty good football player. And I just thought he was a perfect fit for Detroit because they're kind of small at receiver in terms of size. Amon-Ra St. Brown, we know, is an interior guy. Khalif Raymond is 5'9". Isaiah Williams is 5'10" and a half, if that. You got to have somebody else on the outside of Jameson Williams. So Tim Patrick coming to Detroit, not a surprise. I like that move a lot. I also think the Lions will be in the market either for another quarterback, which I mentioned Huntley before, or even another receiver. I think that is possible. What I love about Detroit and the situation that they're in right now is that this is a destination spot. All right. For years, there were guys that the Lions wanted and the Lions were interested in that weren't going to come here, that weren't going to, that weren't going to be interested in being on the Lions. You got Tim Patrick right away. We mentioned him yesterday, and right away he's coming to Detroit. I want you to keep your eyes on Isaiah Hodgins as well as a possibility for the Lions, the former New York Giant, and Terrace Marshall, who was a second-round pick of the Carolina Panthers. He could be another option as well. Maybe they bring in Tim Patrick with the idea of elevating him to the active roster. What if he's not healthy? Yes, he played in 2 preseason games. He looks a little bit better after coming back from the Achilles. But what if Patrick's just slowed down? I think the Lions are I think they're going to stockpile. I don't know if Marshall is what they're thinking, or a guy like Hodgins, who 2 years ago was really good for the Giants. The Lions saw Isaiah Hodgins up close and personal during the week of the joint workouts in the preseason game with the Giants. Those are 2 names to keep an eye on that I think if the Lions want to add to the receiver room, they'll do that. Look, they could always bring back Tom Kennedy to the practice squad. The guy's been on the practice squad and active roster for like 15 years. Those are 2 names to keep an eye on. Again, Hodgins from the Giants, Marshall from the Panthers. But I will say this, if you're cut by the Carolina Panthers, how bad are you? Like, no offense to Terrace Marshall. Was a good player in college down in the SEC, a lot of talent, but I'll have to take a look at the Carolina Panthers wide receiver room. But I think these are players that will take a good long look at Detroit, because I think as you look at the Lions roster, there's no way they're going to go into week 1 with 4 wide receivers, just 4 healthy wide receivers. And I didn't mention this either about the running backs, but Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Craig Reynolds, and Sione Vaki are your guys. This is not a surprise at all with any of the guys that were fighting for spots like Bam Knight, like Jake Funk, like Jamar Jefferson. I would think that Jefferson would be a candidate for the practice squad again. It's been kind of bouncing back and forth with that. You wonder, though, if the Lions would look at anybody else that was let go, but I think they love Vaki. I think this is going to be a guy that's going to play a lot for the Lions. Craig Reynolds, come on, Craig. We know we love him. But I think Sione Vaki is a guy that we're going to see on special teams a ton, return game, and also in games in terms of just a change of pace back, a weapon that they utilize, maybe even in the passing game, that's going to get some opportunities to play. So keep an eye on that. But this was it. I mean, this Lions roster, this isn't like past years. Do you remember the first year that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes came aboard in 2021? Cutdown Day was a really big deal because you had no idea it was going to be on the roster. You knew it was going to be like Jared Goff, of course, and Frank Ragnow and Taylor Decker and guys like that, but there wasn't any talent on the team. So they were tinkering with that roster all year long just to try to find players. Jerry Jacobs and Bobby Price were like the last cornerbacks in late August that made the team. Then all of a sudden, by the end of the situation and the end of the season, these guys were playing a lot and had to play. This year, you look at the cornerback room, you go, all right, Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, Amik Robertson, Ennis Rakestraw, Khalil Dorsey, and Kendall Vildor, a veteran, made it. Stephen Gilmore is on the team all of last year. You figure they wanted him on the practice squad because they stashed him on the active roster all of last season. But those are the guys that are playing, and injured reserve with a chance to return during the season is Emmanuel Mosley. Boy, does that cornerback room just look a lot better than it did a year ago. All right, we'll have the practice squad tomorrow and any other moves that the Lions make. This has been a Cut Down Day Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions. Thanks for making us your first listen. Checking us out wherever you get your podcast, please. We'll do a call of the day tomorrow. Hit us up on our SpeakPipe, that voicemail system where you can leave anything that you want on there as long as you keep it clean. It's speakpipe.com/dairy podcast page.